So, first off, going off of what we talked about earlier, just kind of please lay out the land. Tell me how you're connected to the family, how you're related to Lori, and the family dynamic.
So Lori is my cousin. My dad is Janice's younger brother. And, Lori and Summer and I spent a lot of time growing up together, spending time together in the summers.
And what's the last time that you spoke with Lori? I take it it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been several years. She used to do my hair when she was still living in Austin. And we sort of fell out of touch after that. Summer and I kept in touch on social media for a long time, for a lot of years. And we sort of lost touch through this whole process and haven't really spoken to much of that side of the family since all of this started unfolding.
I would imagine it's been really tough on the family. You mentioned Summer. She testified. She was in tears yesterday. I imagine that it's been tough on you and the rest of the family.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking for all of us. I can only speak for myself, but I've seen and heard comments from other family members. All of us are having a really hard time wrapping our brains around it. And I think we're all dealing with it in different ways.
And I would imagine it's also tough because it's such a high profile case and involving children and such, it's just awful all the way around. So I'm sure that there's lots of speculation. I'm sure that you're inundated with people trying to reach out. What has that been like for you?
Well, because when this all first started and there was a lot of speculation going on, that was why I really turned off the media and the reports and the Netflix specials and all that stuff, Dateline, and didn't really watch a whole lot of that because at the time it was speculation. None of us really knew exactly what was going on, and Lori herself was cut off from her own family, and none of them really were aware of what was going on. So we all were, trying to piece things together in our own way. And I didn't pay attention to the media coverage at that point because it made it harder for me to process everything. Once the children were found, though, it started to become very clear what was fact and what was fiction pretty quickly. And, different family members would text me different things to read or watch or listen to. And that was a little bit helpful to sort of understand what was going on. I'm watching the trial now to sort of fill in the gaps of the things that I don't understand yet and try to make sense of it. So that my main reason for watching the trial is because I wanted to hear the facts and not just listen to speculation in the news.
Have you learned anything by listening or watching the trial coverage? It's kind of hard because there's no cameras, but we were trying to do updates every hour.
Yeah, and I'm listening. I'm really listening to just the audio of the trial for the most part, to listen to the witnesses and not listen to too much commentary on what other people think of the witnesses and all of that. And yeah, I mean, it has been helpful to fill in gaps of things that I didn't know or understand before, but I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions and things we probably will never really know the answers to, regardless of what the outcome of the trial is. So that part is kind of tough. And of course it's heartbreaking to hear the details of what really happened to the kids and what part different people have played in that. And it's been awful to hear Colby and Summer testify and to hear their calls to Lori and how heartbreaking all of that is. It's just incredibly difficult to have this be part of your family story.
I'm sorry that you guys are having to deal with that and to learn things, because a lot of this has been under seal for these years. We're learning new information every day along with you. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for your loss, for your family. You've lost several people.
Thank you.
Any desire to be there in Idaho?
I can't see how that would be helpful or healthy for me at this point. I don't see how sitting in the courtroom would really be helpful. I'm fine where I am, where I've got my support system here, my network of people here, my chosen family here. And they're sort of helping me process through it here. So I'm grateful that we're able to have the court audio so that I don't have to be there. I just think it's better for me to be here.
Well, again, I'm wishing you and the family well. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any indication of who might be supporting Lori? She is cloaked in the presumption of innocence. Supporting her there in Boise?
Another family member told me that she is having weekly Zoom calls with her parents and possibly some other family members. So I think that she's in touch. As far as in the courtroom, I know my uncle was there yesterday with his daughters, and of course Summer was there. So I echo the sentiment that Rex expressed yesterday, that we're all anxious for justice to be served, whatever that looks like. And it's hard for me to say what I think that should be. I'm glad that I'm not the one who has to make that choice.
When was there a change in Lori that was noticeable for people, and when was that?
I've heard other family members comment. Again, I wasn't there, but I've heard other family members say that around 2018, she started listening to podcasts and reading books that were sort of outside the mainstream religion, and that seemed to be when the change started to take place. And I know that she met Chad after that started happening. So.
What was the family? How was the family handling the call for action? Where are the children, when we didn't have answers, when they were missing?
I can only speak for myself there, obviously, because I wasn't with the other part of the family. But for me personally, I would post things on Facebook asking for help, asking people to come forward if they've seen or heard something. And there were some family members who believed that Lori was not involved in their disappearance, or believed that she was protecting the children somehow. And I got blocked from some of my family members on social media. I think because of my activism in trying to find the kids. So there was kind of this, there were two sides to it, of people who wanted to protect and defend Lori's reputation. And, those of us who didn't really care about the reputation, we just wanted the kids found,
Yeah, understandable. And we're hearing testimony. This trial isn't involving the death of Charles Vallow. We're hearing testimony about him, and I've asked Larry and Kay about him, as a person, and I've been able to run some of that sound from an interview with them, talking about, he was just an overall great guy. It sounds like, really loving guy, supporting with his family. Is there anything else that you can share about him? I know that there is outstanding case in Arizona we're going to be covering, I would imagine, or any of Lori's other husbands. We don't know a lot about them either.
Yeah, I only interacted with Joe a couple of times. I only met Charles one time, so I can't really speak to that. I do know that by all accounts that Charles really loved Lori very deeply and cared about her very deeply. By all accounts, he was a great guy, and a loving father. So, when he was killed, there definitely was a split of people in the family who believed that it was definitely self-defense. And then there were some of us who absolutely did not believe that at all. And I was one of those. And so there was sort of that division about, who believed whom and who was protecting whom, and all of that that part was pretty difficult for all of us, I think.
That must have been really a division in the family. That must have been really tough.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, the hardest on Adam, because Charles had reached out to him for help, and he tried to advocate for Charles, and, Barry and Janice were very dismissive of his advocacy and basically told him to get out of the house. So that, that's a pretty stunning, difficult thing to have your own parents get rid of you because you tried to advocate for somebody who needed help.
What can you tell us about the other brother, Alex? He's weaved in this trial so much, and they're talking about, his belief system, believing Lori. Was he always like that with her? And there's been allegations that they had a weird relationship in other regards. What can you share about him?
Well, just in regards to the allegations about their weird relationship, I can just confirm that there was a lot of inappropriate lack of boundaries in the family around sexuality. And so I can just say that, I don't think that it was just a lack of boundaries in the family that perpetuated by the parents that I think were, pretty awful. But as far as Alex and his personality, I mean, when he lived here in San Antonio, he and I were relatively close and hung out from time to time. He was always super funny. But there again, nothing was off limits. So, whether it was, a stupid mistake that you made or your worst traumatic nightmare, it was all fair game for Alex to joke about. And there was a lot of, dysfunction where that's concerned too. So.
Are you able to elaborate any more on like their behavior that you've noticed or that you know about?
You mean Lori and Alex's
Yeah.
behavior? I didn't really observe them together that much. When I spent time with Lori, it was me, Lori, and Summer. I briefly lived with Lori and Adam in Austin for a little while. And then when Alex lived in San Antonio, Lori was kind of in and out between Austin and Del Rio and here. So I didn't really see them together that much as adults. So I can't really.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. So then tell me more about Lori. What do we not know? I mean, was she a good mother at one point? I mean, that's how Colby kind of described her, is that he's grieving the mom that he thought she was. And what can you share about Lori?
I think she really wanted to be a good mother. But it's also the sort of thing where, there was a veneer of goodness and light and sunshine and happiness. And I think underneath that was a lot of dysfunction and a lot of, mental illness, I think personally. And again, I'm not an expert, but I will just say that in my experience dealing with people who have similar personality types, I can say that, there are two sides to that. One side is the public face that you put on, and the other side is, what you portray to everybody else. And in my experiences with Lori, things were great and fine and wonderful unless you disagreed with her or unless you got on her bad side. And then, she would lash out and she would get her way no matter what. She was the golden child of the family.
Wow. She was also on Wheel of Fortune. She was in at least one pageant that I know of. Was she a attention seeker? Did she like the camera? I mean,
yeah, she did. I mean, she loved to have her picture taken. She loved to get attention in every possible form. And I think there's a lot about the family dynamic that explains why she behaved that way. I think she was showered with attention in the family because she sort of met the ideal of the beautiful blonde cheerleader. And, she was that part of her was, her parents very much value physical appearance and attractiveness and personality and all of that. So definitely she would want to enhance that part of her life so that she could feel loved and accepted.
because I've seen her in court, and like with Melanie Gibb, she was kind of giggling and smirking when Melanie was walking out, and then she's laser focused on Melanie's husband, David Warwick, things like that. And then we've all seen the videos of her smiling in cop cars. Is that a changed Lori for you, or is that kind of how she was?
No, that's definitely on brand. She loved attention, and even now she's getting a lot of negative attention, but attention is attention, I think, to her. And I think from what I've heard from some other family members too, that she's enjoying being in the spotlight to some degree and knowing that her story is the most important one, or thinking that anyway.
Do you think she's going to take the stand?
I don't know. There's a lot of, legal strategy, of course, that has to play out here. I'm sure she probably wants to take the stand and tell her story. But I think the defense would probably be pretty worried about what she might say up there. So I don't know. I'm not a legal expert, so I can't speculate.
Me neither. I'm a crime reporter, and I wouldn't put it past her, because ultimately, it's her decision. The judge asked her directly, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Lori's dad, Barry Cox. I have just been learning a little bit more about him. What can you share about that part of the family dynamic and Lori's upbringing?
I think that Barry's personality had a huge impact on everybody in the family. He definitely was your classic patriarch. He loved to pontificate, to quote scripture, to tell us his thoughts and opinions on everything. And for a while there, I was part of a family email chain where he would send these super long emails commenting on politics and how it tied in with religion and all those kinds of things. So I think his opinions were probably very important to Lori. And, certainly any daughter wants to have love and acceptance from their father. So I can understand some of her personality traits come from that desire to be acceptable to her dad.
And what was the lower 95 concept, if I'm getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, Barry commented all the time about how 95% of the population are stupid, sheep, unattractive, uncreative minds, and that our family, we're in the upper 5%. We're more intelligent than everyone, we're smarter than everybody, we're, better looking than everybody. And just by virtue of the fact that we just are. There is no justification for it. We just are. So, it's troubling. It's funny and it's sad, right? I mean, that mentality, you don't want to really believe that somebody thinks that way, but clearly through his actions, he believed he was above the law. He believed that he could get away with almost anything, and, ended up serving prison time and has been under investigation for sexual abuse. And so obviously, some of it's hopefully catching up with him now.
Prison time, was it tax evasion? What was it for?
That's right, tax evasion.
All right, that was my list of questions that we had chatted about. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd really like to share about this experience, about your family, about Lori, about the two children, which is what this is about, and Tammy Daybell? Is there anything that you'd really like to share? I know you don't do a lot of interviews, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't. And I think the main thing is that I'm not trying to justify Lori's actions. I really want to help people understand that I think this entire situation was caused by a harmful family dynamic that was also mixed with unhealthy religious beliefs that were mixed with outlandish religious beliefs. And I really want to prevent things like this from happening again by helping to call attention to the fact that unhealed adults are going to hurt people. And it's our responsibility as adults to go and get our unmet emotional needs taken care of through therapy and counseling and all those kinds of things, because that's why we end up in places like this. Generational trauma continues, the cycle continues until somebody decides to break it. And to me, that's the most important thing, is to call awareness to that and to help people understand that.